Welcome back to Quarantine Science with Miss Franowitz. Today we're making edible cookie dough, and it's delicious. All right, what I'm going to show you today is how to make this delicious cookie dough. I'm just going to make a half batch because I already have so much. But if you want a larger batch, you just double the ingredients. It's a great math exercise. Okay. So first things first, we need to cook our flour. Flour, just like eggs, can carry salmonella or E. coli, other things, because bacteria can grow on most anything. So in order to make this a no-bake edible cookie dough, you need to heat it up. So my oven right now is preheated to 350 degrees, and I'm gonna put 1 cup of flour on my baking sheet. Now, if you were gonna make a whole batch, which makes about as much as I showed you before, an entire Pyrex bowl full, you would double this. So instead of 1 cup, you would need 2. I'm gonna do 1 cup. I'm gonna spread it out. And when my oven is ready at 350 degrees, I will pop that in. Then I have a bowl here to start adding my other ingredients. Now, you're gonna find that there is a lot of butter and sugar, and that's true with any cookie recipe. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you how you can substitute some of that out and still maintain a really delicious flavor, but have a little bit fewer calories. But first things first, it calls for brown sugar. Now, if your brown sugar is hard, like this is rock solid right here, what you can actually do is put a slice of bread in here and let it sit overnight. And the moisture from your bread is going to actually soften up your sugar. And then you'll have a hard piece of bread, but nice soft brown sugar to use. I am lucky enough to have some other brown sugar here that is in better shape, though it's not in great shape. All of my brown sugar is pretty rough right now. And this recipe calls for a half cup of brown sugar. So I've got 1 cup of flour, and I need a half cup of brown sugar. If this is too much sugar for you, because that is a lot of sugar, it's a 1-to-2 ratio of sugar to flour, you can always half the sugar and then exchange the other half for a low-calorie sweetener such as stevia or something of that nature. It actually works really well. That's what I did in my last batch of these. All right, next, you're going to need a lot of butter. This recipe calls for a half cup of butter, so it's equal parts butter and brown sugar, and that's a lot. Now, what I did in my last batch is instead of using the full amount of butter, I actually did half the butter, and then I did the other half with Greek yogurt. Applesauce is also a good replacement for some butter. It gives the right texture without adding as many calories. Applesauce is sweet, however, so you would just want to be aware that it might make your mixture a little bit sweeter than you intended. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to plop it in. That's my oven. That means that I can put my flour in. I'm going to bake my flour in the oven for 5 minutes at 350 degrees. Now, I am looking good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add milk. For milk, this recipe calls for 2 tablespoons. But since I am having the recipe, I only need 1 tablespoon. It calls for vanilla extract, but I like almond extract as well. So I'm gonna do a half a teaspoon of vanilla and a half a teaspoon of almond extract in this to make it delicious. Usually I don't measure my vanilla, I just kind of pour it because you can't go wrong with vanilla flavoring in your baking. Let me move my milk out of the way. So I'm putting all of that into the bowl. And then last but certainly not least, and easy to forget because this is a sweet item, you still need to add salt. Salt wakes up your taste buds and makes it so that everything, all the flavors kind of meld together in your mouth and you can really get those great flavors. Again, since I am having this recipe, this usually calls for a teaspoon of salt, but I only need a half a teaspoon. That's about that. All right, so now that I have this beautiful mixture, I'm gonna start stirring it up in preparation for when my dough comes out of the oven. This is a really great use of time actually, because since you're only baking your flour for 5 minutes, you can kind of get that going while you stir up the rest of your ingredients. What I would recommend though is that when your flour comes out, I would recommend you let it cool off before you put it in here. And that's because the flour is hot, and so it'll actually kind of bake things a little bit, and it makes it have a little bit gummier of a texture, kind of more Play-Doh-y, which is fine and it still tastes delicious. But if you're a texture person and that sort of thing would bother you, then you're gonna wanna let your flour cool down before you mix it in with everything else. Stir, 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 stir. All right, so this is, it's all right. It would be better if I had softened my brown sugar, but it's gonna be good enough to show you what's going on. So, I'm gonna show you what kinds of cookie dough I made previously. I actually have 4 different cookie doughs here. I like to call this one the party mix. It has sprinkles and chocolate chips mixed in. Down here is my snickerdoodle. It's cinnamon, nutmeg, and pretzels and walnuts. I've got cookies and cream. It has mashed up Oreos inside. And this is my peppermint bark. It has white chocolate peppermint and chocolate sprinkles. There's so many different combinations you can make. I'm really curious what you're gonna make when you do this yourself at home. Please share in the comments or send me a message so I know what kind of cookie dough you came up with. All right, so we're almost done. Now you may have noticed that there is a very obvious ingredient that is missing from this recipe. I'm gonna give you a moment to think about what that might be. We have flour, we have brown sugar, we have butter and milk, and that's right, there's no eggs. Now, eggs can carry something that we all know very well. It's called salmonella. It's a type of food poisoning, and it used to be thought that salmonella was only found on the outside of eggs, and that if you washed your eggs, you would be fine and you wouldn't have any problem with raw eggs. Well, we have since learned that's not true. Salmonella can be on the inside of eggs as well, which means that if we put it in our edible cookie dough, it would unfortunately make it dangerous for us to eat. So we skip it in this edible cookie dough. Bonus points if you can tell me on my next video, or if you can put in the comments of this video, how the salmonella gets to the inside of the egg. That's my timer. Let's get the flour. All right. So, here's my flour, right? Now it's pretty hot. I just took it out of the oven, of course. So if I were you, I would recommend that you let it cool off. But because I just want to let you see how this is going to come together, I'm going to put it right in I don't mind the gummy texture too much. You may. I just picked up my foil liner for my cookie sheet. I'm gonna dump it right in. Now, if you have a silicone liner, of course, that's preferable to using something like aluminum foil because it's reusable, and so then you know that you're saving the environment, you're being more earth conscious. I can't find my silicone liners, and I really wanted to put out this video because I promised I would. So I did go with aluminum foil today. All right, I'm mixing this up. And you can even see it's starting to take that cookie dough form. It looks and smells amazing. Once you have this base dough, you can add anything you want to it. Put cocoa powder in with white chocolate chips. You can make a banana nut brownie muffin kind of cookie. I mean, you can put anything you want in it. I do recommend that you try to make a batch that's the right size for you to eat that day. It saves, you can put it in the fridge and it saves overnight. But like I said, how the dough can get a little gummy if you put hot flour in. I've also found that it tends to change in texture after it's been in the fridge for a little bit. That's why I made this half batch. I actually think that it's the perfect amount for maybe 2-3 people to have a fun dessert while in quarantine. So there you have it. Edible cookie dough. Baked flour to prevent any bacteria, no eggs, all the flavor, all the fun, and it only took like 10 minutes. Have a wonderful day, and the next time I see you, we're gonna be making cornstarch slime. Bye.